What is up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit, and today we're going to be talking the NA Countdown Cup. We're going to go over the matches, talk about the meta, all that kind of fun stuff. But before we dive into that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. Everybody out there on YouTube, thank you very much. Thank you for all of your likes, subscribes, all the views, and all that. Very much appreciated. Everybody out there in podcast land, whether you're listening on Spotify or on iTunes, thank you very much. I appreciate all the listens and everything you guys have done for me as well. All right, let's jump into the NA side of the Countdown Cup tournament. We are going to talk APAC. That episode will be up on Tuesday afternoon sometime. But first, I wanted to dive into the NA Cup, the NA Countdown Cup, because it was there was a lot more to unpack, a lot more matches and that kind of thing. We could talk about this one a little bit more. I think with APAC, we have a general knowledge of, and we're getting there with NA. We know who the really good team is in APAC, and probably in NA as well. But first, we'll give my general thoughts on the tournament. I thought it was pretty good. It was fun, of course. I like when the teams get to pick each other and all that. Knockout rounds, only place where we had really close matches, in my estimation. We had Dallas and Washington. They went 3-2. Dallas won that. Gladiators Defiant also went 3-2, and the Gladiators took that one. The other two matches, which one I thought Houston was going to win. I thought they might have learned something, but apparently they didn't. The Valiant did, and they destroyed Houston. We thought Atlanta would take care of business with Vancouver. They're just better. Dallas and Washington, though, I had Washington. I thought Dallas would be a little boom. Dallas came out. They showed that they turned the page on all the stuff that happened in the week, and good for them. They focused. They played a decent match against Washington and beat them 3-2. The Gladiators are sort of getting back to where we thought they should be. Defiant played a really good match, but the overall talent just came out in the end of this one, and that also happened in the Dallas match. Dallas is way more talented than Washington right now. Same thing with the Gladiators. They're way more talented than the Defiant, and those two teams won. But my overall feel for the tournament was there was a lot, and this goes on both sides even. There was a lot of one-sided matches. We're starting to see a lot of separation between teams. Yes, it's meta-dependent. There could happen to be a change if the Genji nerfs go through, or they put any of the stuff that's on the experimental card in. We don't know what's going to happen with that yet. The Brigida nerf and the Orisa nerf. Like, if they nerfed Orisa, that's going to upset the apple cart pretty good. But I don't think that a lot of that stuff is going to go through. I think if anything, we'll see the Genji changes, and that could take us into some of the stuff that we saw this weekend. We saw some May and Reaper, saw some Junkrat. But as we got further into the tournament, as the rounds kind of ticked away, we kind of saw more of just a standard kind of thing, a couple of them. Yeah, there were variants here and there. We saw a lot of dive-ish comp, we'll call it, with Genji Sombra, Winston Zarya, and then generally Brig Ana or Brig Bap. We saw some Zenyatta in there. A little bit of Lucio if they were running a rush comp, which San Francisco did. We saw a whole bunch of different stuff, actually. I mean, those were the main things we saw once we got past some of the teams that were struggling with the meta, the lower ranked teams. We saw a lot less Junkrat. Yeah, we did see some teams run it. It is good on certain maps, especially control maps, where a lot of them are in close quarters. Securing points and holding points is a lot more important. The amount of damage that Junkrat does on those maps is way more useful than on some of the other maps. Yes, he's good on Anubis, like first point hold and that kind of stuff. In general, at least he has a spot now. I love watching Junkrat play, and there was some good stuff. We saw Erster have a big 5K. There were a couple other really good tires and things like that, and just annihilations. But overall, in general, we had a couple of compositions that just stood out and worked better than most. Control maps aside, it was, as we said, the Winston, Zarya, with Sombra, Genji or Sombra Tracer, and then pick your support. Generally speaking, it was Brig Ana or Bap Ana, Bap Brig. saw some Zenyatta, like we said. And, generally it was the guys that could absolutely frag the hell out, like Violet, who, no matter what he gets on, it seems like lately, he's just god tier. The first round was, out of any tournament, it's a little more intriguing because you have good teams playing bad teams, and sometimes strange things happen. It didn't happen, at least numbers-wise, except for the Defiant and the Gladiators, but those two teams are like neck and neck, in my opinion. Dallas is better than Washington. Of course, they won out. The Valiant, I thought Houston could pull something out. Dante's been carrying them, but the Valiant learned so much from them last week that just 3-0'd him and moved on. Now, the quarterfinals, this is where we get into, there was a lot of stomping going on here on out until we get to the finals. San Francisco picked Dallas first, and then Paris took the Valiant, Philly took the Gladiators, and Florida got stuck with Atlanta. Now, San Francisco just demolished Dallas. They did what they do, which we're going to talk more about them. We're going to talk more about them later on and their dominance, but they just destroyed Dallas. We also had Philly destroyed the Gladiators. Paris got a map taken away from them. They did not look as great as they did, but they still took care of business against the Valiant, just miles above. Florida, they have Atlanta's number right now. They took them out fairly easily, which kind of shocked me. I thought Atlanta at least would put up a little bit more of a fight. Florida beat them 3-0. Just great play from Florida. They really had no answer for Yaki and BQB, which is... I don't get. And Gargoyle is a beast in this game. Atlanta didn't play terrible. Florida is just better at this point. It's hard for me to grasp and say that, but Florida is just better right now. Right now, Atlanta, just a quick word on Atlanta. They're the fifth team. They can beat anybody from Florida down. The Valiant, Houston, Dallas, Washington, any of those teams, they could give a fight to. Where they run into trouble is when they play Florida, Paris, San Francisco, or Philly. They just get rolled. I don't know if it's how they're running comps, their team, or if it's just those teams are just better. Just all around. I think they're the gatekeeper of the top four. They're not quite as good as those top four teams in this meta. I'll throw them that. But they're better. They can beat all of the rest of the teams below them. So they've improved in my mind in this segment, I guess if you want to call it the pre-countdown cup from the last power rankings we did. I'll be doing a power rankings, speaking of that, just really quick. We'll be doing a power rankings after these next couple of weeks. We have that nice week break there. The playoffs start September 3rd. And we have 2 weeks of action to catch up games and all that stuff, which we're going to get into later in the week. We'll talk about those. There's actually some good matches actually coming up. I'll do a power rankings going into the playoffs. It was fun. Last time we did it was fun. I got some of them wrong, some of them right. Top four is really not hard right now, but you get in that mucky middle, things change from week to week, day to day. 1 week I'm saying Dallas is terrible, and next week I'm saying, hey, Dallas is good. Put your team of choice name: Houston, Valiant, Washington, Toronto. All right, Washington's a stretch. They're generally bad. Vancouver, generally bad, but they have a lot more issues outside of their players. Vancouver, but that's a discussion for that show. All right, so quarters, pretty much stomp jobs. All right, let's talk about the semis. San Francisco, Florida was the first one. A lot of people really liked the mayhem in this. I said they had a sliver of a chance, but the thing with playing San Francisco right now, or, in the future, they have top-level guys at every position, and they're stacked on them. You go into a match like this, Florida, they looked really good in the first map. To me, I get this feeling, it's like watching Muhammad Ali used to fight, and this goes into this next match, and in general, for the way San Francisco plays. They go into that first map for knowledge. Much like Ali used to go first couple rounds of a fight, he'd get beat up a little bit, but what he would be doing, and it's what San Francisco does, is they look for weaknesses. They look for weaknesses, they look for their strengths, who they can exploit, what they can exploit. And then in the subsequent rounds after that, that is when San Francisco just puts the pedal to the floor and their foot on your throat and just end it. Yeah, you might get a map after that. But when they're initially they go out, they're out there seeking knowledge. Because these guys, on the whole, as a team, San Francisco is the smartest team in the league, bar none. That includes Shanghai, Guangzhou, fucking Florida, Philadelphia, who are all good teams. The Shock are the best. And where does that come from? That comes from Krusty. These guys know what to do, know when to do it, and you know what? There's another thing that they have that some of those other teams don't have. They are not passive whatsoever. There were a lot of times in this Mayhem match where Florida had the upper hand in a fight. They go in with EMP. They hit a 5-man EMP, 4-man EMP. They start getting follow-up damage. Then all of a sudden you look at the kill feed, and then Violet, after 2 kills, Violet all of a sudden has the 3 kills. Choi Hobin's done something. They grab, they win the fight. That is San Francisco. They don't care if they're down 2 guys, unless, something catastrophic happens. Yes, they do lose fights, but they are not afraid to invest into a fight that you would think is not worth investing in. That is what makes them good, and they win those fights because their players are so good at adjusting on the fly and moving around ultimates and cycling ultimates better than the other team. So Florida might go in there with an EMP or a grab, but San Francisco has the counter to that, and then the subsequent ultimate that's going to win the fight. Whether it's if they're playing Genji, it's a blade. If they're playing, they do a big bang with a Choi Hyobin and Striker on Tracer. Or, Violet or Twilight, whoever's playing Ana, generally Twilight. Twilight's got Nano, Nano Smurf. Smurf goes in with Primal, fight over. They just know how to, they are unbelievable. Florida did not play bad in this map. They were outplayed. That is the one thing. The outplays, like I was saying, that San Francisco does are just amazing. And, it continued on into the finals, too. Paris, Philadelphia played unbelievably well in this. Boy, Alarm just every week just impresses me. He had so many good plays in this. And the key to their matches, and there was a little bit of a discussion in one of the preview videos. I wanted to see Hisu and Carpe do Carpe things. Carpe played a little bit in this. He was out a lot because they had Ivy and Hisu playing, which I liked. I thought it was good. It works well. I know, you want Carpe in there because he's a god. But if something like this is working that good, keep it in. But Alarm was the key. A lot of it was the key. Was Alarm keeping Sato alive. It always seemed like when Sato got into trouble, Alarm was there to bail him out. And he always seemed to have Primal, and they had Nano. He was getting most of the Nanos. Yeah, they would run a Nano Blade once in a while, but it was apparent, and this goes into the finals too, he was using that as a tactic to not only keep Sato alive, but keep pressure on the other team. And it really worked against Paris. I think Sparkle's having nightmares about this match because, he got some stuff done, but every time he seemed to appear, Alarm was sleep darting him. I really don't know if he's probably seeing him in his nightmares right now. Let's just put it that way. But they took care of business pretty handily after losing the first map. Kind of along the lines of what we were saying with the Shock operate. They were kind of operating like that. They kept a lineup in there for some of it that, people thought is not an optimal with Hisu and Ivy. They did run some Carpe, like I said, but they were just, today they were better than Paris. I had them to beat Paris. I thought they were just a tick better. And I was going on the Carpe factor and EQO, possibly, but I also liked Hisu's Sombra. I thought that was another key to them winning. His Sombra is really, really good, and right now, she is very, very important to winning matches. So having your best Sombra player in there is good. Yes, can Carpe run her? Sure. I would have Hisu in there just because Hisu is just inherently better on that hero. He looked good all weekend long. Philadelphia looked good all weekend long. And they moved on to the finals, beat Paris. San Francisco took care of Florida. Florida was in it for a little bit, but they got boomed, like we were saying. And it's all a shock mental, just overriding whatever you're trying to do. They just adjust properly. All right, so the final. Now, this is the match that everybody's wanted to see for over a month. We want to see Philly take on San Francisco in a meaningful game. San Francisco did work them a few weeks back, 3-0. They just shut them down. And I was a little leery about that coming in. But, after watching San Francisco struggle, and we're putting that in quotes, struggle, not necessarily have their best game on with the Genji stuff, then they figured something out somewhere in the quarterfinals. Oh yeah, we got Rascal. If we need a Genji player, we'll have Rascal come in. And he absolutely ate Florida for lunch. There was one point, I think he had 18 final blows per 10 minutes on Genji. That's ridiculous. So moving into this match, all right, we're waiting for this. We finally get it. Philadelphia comes out. They're running a Reaper Genji kind of thing going on. Or is running a lot of Sombra Genji stuff. Sato playing the Winston looked really good. It just looked good at the first map. They were giving San Francisco a fight. And like we were saying, they were feeling the Shock were doing their feel out phase where they felt it out. Okay, so then they move into the next match. They rotate their whole lineup. Well, not their whole lineup, a bunch of it. They bring in Super, Ons, and Moth. Philly won that pretty handily. They won that first match, in my estimation, from what I saw. They were just outplaying San Francisco. And it wasn't as much as San Francisco playing bad. Philly had good ult economy. Alarm was enabling Sato, like we said. All of the things that made them get to here, they were doing it well. It was working out good. Kings Row comes up. San Francisco puts in Super, Ons, and Moth. They decide, all right, fuck this. We're running a rush comp. It works. I think they tried it a little bit they thought it could work and beat them, and boy, did it. They do this thing where, and this is also one of the things that makes them good, and they did it in this map specifically, and it's a microcosm of what San Francisco does. They make you pick this or that. You have to play this or that with them. And both answers are wrong. That's the problem. So in this, the question is, do you focus Super or do you take care of Ons? They decided focus Super, keep him in control, let Ons go. Bad idea. Ons went nuts on the Widowmaker. See, but the contrary to this is if you're playing it the other way. Okay, so we're going to have Hisu or Ivy, somebody match up against Ons on the Widow. That leaves you with Sato on Winston and Super. Maybe you switch Sato to Winston, or to Reinhardt. But that didn't mean Sato versus Super on Reinhardt. I take Super every fucking day on that. It's an outplay, and there is no escape from. This is like Saw. You either die or you stab your friend in the face to get out of the fucking before you die. There's not a good outcome. Something bad always happens. And that is the genius of the way they play. And they did that on Kings Row. The Fusion did have a nice run in there, and they brought it in. I think they had like a minute less than Philly, which is a lifetime. They ran on the subsequent round. The Shock just shut them down. I don't even think they barely got a tick. I don't think they got one at all. I think, yeah, because the Shock just go in, touch the point on theirs. They had like 2.5 minutes or something like that, 2:20 something. They had a decent enough time back, but they took care of that map. You go into halftime and you're just like, okay, so this is close, which it was. Anubis happens. So this is where you're going to learn why the Shock are the best team in the league. This map, they just absolutely dominated Philadelphia in this. And this was an ultimate outplay. This wasn't like the last map where you had to pick your poison. It somewhat had some of that, but this was Philadelphia goes in with a grav. San Francisco has this counter, that counter, get off the point, no ticks. They ended up getting 2/3 of the point A, but San Francisco played that defense impeccably. They just, I don't want to say ran over them. They had an answer for everything that Philadelphia did. Philadelphia comes in with something, Twilight sleeps somebody. Somebody gets nanoed. outplay, fight over, reset. It happened numerous times. Choi Kyobin went mad crazy at one point. It was him, and I believe it was him and Twilight were in a room with four of the Fusion, and Twilight and Choi came out alive. Moving on to Gibraltar, this is where we see the Fusion. Mind you, this is their second map pick in a row. They picked Anumas because they were smart, unlike Florida, and didn't pick Hanamura, which the Shock haven't lost on, and the Mayhem thought they were going to beat them on that map, which was weird. But Philly didn't fall into that trap. They took Anubis. So, another map pick for Philly. They go Gibraltar, great map pick. It works against all of the things that San Francisco was trying to do to them, and worked in favor of the way they play. So they got verticality, they got Genji going, they got all of the stuff that you want to see Philadelphia do. Sato was playing really well in this one. San Francisco at the door, a little bit from the door, after the car wash, and their round, it was a fight. There was a couple of times I'm like, they are not going to get it here, but they did manage to squeak it out. I believe Sato had a key primal at a certain point. Alarm had a couple of massive sleep darts, and nades, grounded out and won 1-0. They had to put everything, like all of their willpower into that just to win that 1-0. They almost got full held. They almost full held the Shock. I mean, these teams are not that far apart. It's just some of the mental stuff that San Francisco has. Mechanically, I would say they're on the same level, if not, and I believe that's kind of the reason why I picked Philadelphia to win this match, was mechanically speaking, I say Philadelphia is close to them on every hero, but mentally on every hero, San Francisco, the thing that I didn't look at, game knowledge, San Francisco is just that little bit better than Philadelphia. And then the next map, San Francisco just goes nuts, absolutely destroys them. And then I think on Oasis, they pick Oasis, they just take it to them. We then moved on to the final map, Numbani. Philly put up a good fight. Shock, though, they ran in pretty good. But overall, Shock outplayed Philadelphia. I know a lot of people are like, oh, if they could just get it together, Philadelphia. The thing is the unfortunate thing with people saying that Philadelphia, they might be choking or this kind of thing, they're not choking in these big games. They're just a scenario where they're playing against a team that's just a little bit better than them at that given moment. When you look at you go back to the finals in season 1. London was on fire with Gesture, Prophet, Birdring, Badosin. Those guys were playing out of their frickin' minds, especially at that point where they hadn't played that way for a good 2 months or 2 stages, and they just came back around. Last tournament, the Summer Showdown, Genji back in the lineup with Sparkle playing out of his mind, and Hanbin and Fielder and FD God. They just got, they just had these little outplay moments or where a meta is just so much in favor of the other team that they just get they don't play bad, but they just don't have enough to beat the other team. And it doesn't make them a bad team. It doesn't make them inferior, choking. It's just, unfortunately, bad. To me, it's bad luck of the draw for Philly. I call it more that than anything. I'm a Denver Broncos fan. And in the 80s, Denver was the best team in the AFC. By far. The thing is they would get to the Super Bowl and they would have to play the Giants or the 49ers or the Redskins that were playing on a level like San Francisco's playing, where they're just a tick below them. Now, Denver got blown out in those games. They didn't come close to what Philadelphia did. But it was the same kind of scenario where if you picked a different year, yeah, Denver would have probably won. If you pick a different tournament, like a different time frame, a different meta, yeah, Philadelphia could have done better. And people are saying that this meta wasn't for the Shock, including me to an extent. But the thing is you don't take into account their mental and the fact that they're stacked. They have role stars on every role right now that are MVP candidates. And that includes their bench guys being MVP candidates, some of them, that are just that good. You have guys in the bench like Moth Super Ons that are in the regular rotation, Rascal. Right now they're generally running Smurf Choi, Twilight, Violet. But my point is that they have guys that know the ins and outs of all the heroes and all. They're just too good. I feel bad for Philly in that, I think that they are a great team. I just think that they ran into a situation where they were up against the wrong team again. Any other team in this tournament, if San Francisco magically lost, say, to Florida, they would have beat Florida. They beat Paris. They could beat any other team that is in from, one down. They could beat Paris. They could beat Florida. They can beat Atlanta. They could beat every team in the league. They just have trouble once in a while. Yes, all right, so they lost to Paris in the last one. But I'm saying, like, right now, it's just the one team that would give them the biggest fits is the team that they always end up playing. But overall, the tournament was fun. I like this format a lot better than I thought I would. I think it's great. The matches weren't exactly great, but they all had great moments in them. A lot of cool things to watch. And, sometimes watching a team like San Francisco do what they do is almost more fun or as fun as watching a tight, compelling match. And the finals match was close. But there were just moments where you could feel San Francisco's power level. And it was just crazy. But I do like watching good teams play. And sometimes I like watching them dominate. They didn't necessarily go dominant in this one to an extent, but they showed why a lot of people think they're the best team in the world. I personally am one of them. I think Shanghai is at one point after watching them do what they did, which we're going to talk about in the next episode. It's hard to go against this team. Props to them for winning. They just are head and shoulders above the rest of the teams in the league, minus maybe Shanghai. I think on a good day, Philadelphia could get them. I'm not gonna back down on that. I think Philadelphia can beat them. Hopefully they learn from this and we get to see this again. Actually we get to see it next week, but in a meaningful format, not just make it like a regular season game. I'm talking tournament, playoffs, that kind of stuff, which are right around the corner. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it. I'd like to thank everybody out there in YouTube land. Thank you very much for all your likes, subscribes. If you're new, please hit a like, hit a subscribe, hit that alert bell. I got content coming out anywhere from 3 to 5 times a week, depending on what we got going on. Obviously, we had 2 tournaments, so there's going to be a little bit more stuff going on this week. Stay tuned for coming up on Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening. It's Monday currently. Look for my APAC recap. We talk about the APAC tournament, Shanghai, go down through the bracket there. Our takeaways from that, we're getting ready to see where we're going to start seeding teams for the playoffs. It's getting exciting. The year is almost over, guys. We're almost finished for 2020. But like I said, that's going to do it. I'd like to thank everybody again. You're all greatly appreciated. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody stay safe. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you on the next one.